Good morning. Here we are, Saturday. Um, kind of a lot of storm last night, right? I think it's cooler today, so that's kind of nice. Um, so I have a feeling I'm going to have to do some work this weekend. Which, if my husband is watching, he's probably going to be sad to hear. But um, I think it's another one of those weekends. I feel like if we miss this window for the weather, we're going to regret it. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So that's maybe that's a good little thing to talk about with yoga. So we talked earlier this week about the idea of personal responsibility and how independence, right? The independence of our society um, makes that so important. We don't have a lot of people telling us what to do. Maybe you did when you were a kid, but as you get older, uh, we don't have um, a lot of cultural rules anymore. Things have changed, and this is a good thing, right? It is good. Like freedom is a good thing, but as with all good things, it can be abused. So yoga helps us. It gives us a framework, right? Yoga isn't um, punitive in the way some cultural traditions can be, but it is. It does give you a framework, right? The yamas and the niyamas. Um, we know what the right things are to do, um, and we we can put that into play. It's not necessarily easy, but it is um, it is really important because you know when we don't have some kind of check on our behavior, um, we don't we don't go to the shoulds, right? We end up with the coulds. And in a world where you could do anything, sometimes it's hard to choose, right? Sometimes, if you've ever been in a situation where you've been given too many options, too many decisions to make, too many choices, it can be staggering. It can be really, you can get really stuck because you aren't, um, you don't have the information or the guidance, right, to narrow things down. So you feel like, with so many choices, there's so many wrong options, right? And maybe only one right one. The truth is, in most situations, there's lots of right answers and lots of wrong answers. And even wrong choices we can often make right. Um, it's about your intent. What is what's the intent behind your action, right? Are you choosing this out of selfish desire for your own needs and disregarding anybody else's? Then it might not be a good choice. Now, if you're talking about something like ice cream flavor, that's not really an issue. But, a lot of our choices in life are a lot more significant than that. Let the yamas and the niyamas, well, the yamas really be your guide, right? The niyamas are really about how we take care of ourselves. The yamas are our sort of our guide or guidelines for dealing with the world and with other people. Um, so let that give you a little framework. Let that narrow down some of the choices. Um, and then we spoke about the idea again that yoga is a yoke, like a yoke of oxen, right? It is a framework, a structure through which we are controlled to some extent, right? We are not out of control doing anything we want, but that control translates into the ability to do something, to take all of that raw energy and desire and belief and movement and all the things that we have, and to move forward into um, the next step, right? Instead of just blowing our energy on nothing, wasting all of our time and energy and resources, we are directing it in a way that allows us to make progress toward whatever goal it is we're trying to progress towards. Yoga doesn't tell you your goals. This is important, right? Yoga does not tell you your goals. Yoga tells you the most efficient way to reach those goals. Um, it is a vehicle, right? If you think of a car, a car can be the best thing in the world for someone who doesn't have transportation, needs to get to a job, needs to get to school, needs to go and see people that they care for, all of those things. But it can also be the worst thing in the world. You know, people can have a car accident. People can drive drunk. People can abuse that vehicle in a way um, that causes a great deal of damage, right? The vehicle is what concentrates whatever it is we have inside, right? If we are trying to do good, trying to get better, trying to work, right, with our nature, but in a yogic form, right? We are making good choices. We are moving towards our objective. Yoga is going to be like the most luxurious car you've ever had. Um, but you could also do damage, right? You could use yoga to damage your body, right? I see people all the time who have um, taken to asana and yoga as some kind of uh, like a extreme exercise routine, and they've done serious long-term damage to their body from that. Um, People who take, the yoga yamas, to an extreme, right, where they are barely eating food, or they stop eating certain things because um, they're not allowed to, and they're miserable, they're unhappy, um, or they use, yoga as a way to avoid doing things that um, they really should be doing, but they um, yoga's, no, it's not yogic, or they use yoga to judge a lot of other people, right? I don't, this person isn't yogic enough, or that person is, not practicing real yoga, right? Which is so funny, right? Because real yoga is absolutely not doing that, right? We might recognize that someone is not doing something yogic, but to call them out, to to make a big deal about that, that's, it's not yoga, right? Yoga is about your path. It's about staying in your lane, right? Not running into other people's lanes and telling them how unyogic they are and running over top of them, right? That's not to say we aren't going to, call things out when we see people doing things that are unkind or cruel or wrong towards others, right? We may, again, in that umbrella of ahimsa, do no harm, we might step out, right? Um, but that's different, right? It's different when you are trying to reduce the harm, right? Um, and we know what that means. Um, it means living your truth, being true. So following these things is hard, right? But ultimately, they're going to get you where you want to go. Um, so when you are faced with a decision about whether you should do something or not, think about your yoga. Think about your yoga yamas, right? Um, we talk about this all the time, right? So let's just briefly, because I want to do more asana today. I really do. Um, let's touch on these yamas. And I need to look it up because I know them, but I don't know the order in which we teach them. I've forgotten. And I don't want to get it wrong. Okay. Ahimsa, I know that big one. Do no harm. Um, big, right? We don't always practice this. We are constantly getting this wrong, messing this up, right? We're harming others, we're harming ourselves. We make bad choices from time to time, but we know what the right thing is to do. Um, people, uh, I've said it before, right? This idea that, you don't have to be a vegetarian to be yogic. But I mean, you gotta know that, when you're eating meat, um, it is it is harm, right? You are harming another living being to get your food. Now, is this ever is this ever okay? I mean, if that's the only food you can get, yeah, it's okay because you need to stay alive, right? We've talked about this also, this idea that, there are Buddhists in Tibet and Nepal. There's not much to eat besides the meat that the livestock that they have. Things don't grow. It's too high elevation. It's too cold. Um, you got to do what you got to do. But we have huge options, right? We go to the grocery store. We get to pick. So, it's okay. Make your choice, but know that what you're doing is, it's either harmful or it's not. Um, yeah. So don't don't tell yourself a story that's not true, but understand that, you know we're all going to find our way in this, right? We're never going to do everything 100%. We do what works for us, right? Sacha, next one, truthfulness, live your truth. um, just to touch back on the whole idea of eating meat, not eating meat. If you do choose to eat meat, ways to minimize this, right, is to, where do you get your meat, right? Are you getting it from, some big, you know, corporation or whatever that's just in the business of like slaughtering animals? Probably not the least harmful way to do it. Maybe a less harmful place would be to find a small farmer who's raising the food, treating them well, giving them, a good life for the time that they're here. Um, Again, these things matter. The degrees to which you choose to do things. Um, so you know this, right? There are more harmful and less harmful ways to do things. Choose the less harmful if you can. Satcha, truthfulness, live your truth, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't pretend to be somebody else. Don't say things because you think somebody else would say them and it sounds better or whatever. Um, Look within. Um, Live a life that aligns with that interior self. If you're not sure what that is, take some time to find out. Um, who you are is important. You're here for a reason. You are the way you are because you're meant to be that way. Um, You have a role to play. You may not know what that is. No one may know what that is until the end, and maybe not even then. Um, but letting your real self shine through is important. That is how you find your place. That is how you find your people. If you feel out of place, it's because you aren't you aren't showing who you are. It's really funny, right? People feel uncomfortable, they feel out of place, so they try to fit in. They try to be even less who they are, and that makes them feel worse. They become even less comfortable. Um, so let let it all be out there. Be who you are. You will find other people just like you, and it will be good. Asteya, non-stealing. Okay, this sort of goes along with, truthfulness, right? We're not stealing, we're not pretending to be something else, but we're also not taking from others. We're not taking, obviously, their physical things, their material goods, but we're not taking their um, responsibilities. We're not taking their credit. We're not stealing their joy. We're allowing others to be themselves just as we would. We aren't judging others. We aren't um, feeling diminished by others' choices, right? This is important because I see this all the time. We see other people do well, and all we want to do is tear them down, right? Explain, oh, well, they had it easy. I had it much harder. Well, of course, they did this. They've got a lot of money, or they've got a lot of time, or they've got a lot of whatever. Okay, well, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to make their accomplishments look less important, right? That is a really crummy way of trying to make ourselves feel better. Don't waste your time with that, right? Let others be others. Let them celebrate their joys, their happinesses. It doesn't diminish yours. Happiness is not a pie in which we take a slice and there's less for everyone else. Happiness is huge. It's like love. It's endless, boundless. The more there is, the more there is. So be happy for others. Let them be happy. Um, I have a sticker from a place. There's a place in New York um, that makes these banners. They're beautiful with different sayings and things on them. And they have a sticker that says "Celebrate everything." I love that. Celebrate everything. Why not? Why do we wait? Why do we hold back? Why don't we just, you know, let everything be? So don't take other people's limelight or their um, joy, right? Their very existence. A lot of people don't know how to not be the center of attention. They don't want uh, to step out of the limelight and let others have their turn. If you feel like that is true for you, really work on that because that is a very damaging way to live your life. If you feel like you always need to be the center of attention, you are wholly dependent on other people's actions, other people's reactions for your own existence. Um, that is not at all yogic, right? It is not at all that self focused. We are, again, looking at others. Um, so, yeah, not great. But we can work on that, right? Brahmacharya, moderation and self-restraint. This is another one that's hard. Um, so in a classic yogic term, we talk about uh, celibacy, right? Celibacy is um, uh, an idea, a moderate way to be, right? Actually, it's a fairly extreme way to be, but it can be a moderate way to be. Um, what we say in a more modern parlance when you're talking about householders, practicing yoga, is an appropriate use of sexuality, right? Not using your sexuality as a tool or a weapon, using it in an appropriate relational setting, um, in a way that's healthy for you and for other people. And in that sense, let's bring in um, the satya, right? Your truth, living that the way that is true for you, not the way the society tells you to, or that the magazine that you read said that you should do. Doing what is right for you, um, and then moderation in everything, in our consumption of food, of entertainment, of work, right? All of these things working for that middle path. Um, and, as you know, with all of these things, we veer, right? We might be on the middle path for a little bit, and then we're over on one edge, and then we're over on the other edge, and we go back and forth. But we're striving for that middle. And the longer you stay on the middle, the easier it is. But know that if you go off one way or the other, you can always come right back to that middle. And aparigraha, which is the last one, the funny one, um, the hardest one to say, is not being greedy or coveting, non-hoarding, right? Not holding on to more than what you need. This is an important one because oftentimes I think we get this signal in our society that is the end goal, right? He who dies with the most toys wins, right? This sort of famous and extremely toxic saying that I've heard. I would say he who dies with the most toys curses their children, right? Because their children are burdened with this pile of stuff that inevitably nobody really wants, right? Um, Things carry a weight. And the more that you have, the more weighed down you are. Um, Everything has a cost. So, certainly the material cost of getting whatever it is you have, but then storing it, caring for it, remembering that you have it, knowing where it is. These are all mental strains and physical strains, right? If you have a lot of stuff, you need a lot of place to put it. You need more, right? You need a bigger house, a bigger everything, bigger car, bigger, way more than perhaps is sensible or useful. Um, if you look at your typical American house, right, now from 50 years ago, 100 years ago, um, it's really expanded. Our idea of what we should have and what is constitutes a successful living space or whatever is very different than it once was. Which again, not isn't always a huge big deal, right? You may live in an older house, you're giving life to a new space, but if you are building a gigantic new house, you are taking up resources, you are taking up space. Um, and not to say that it's always bad, right? But we got to remember what we're doing. Think about what we're trying to do. Um, are we using space appropriately, or are we overusing? Are we taking more than what we need? Um, we've said this before in class, there is enough for everyone. There would be if we distributed it correctly. Um, that's what we're going for. We're trying to get to a place, get to a world where everyone has what they need. That doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect, right? There'll still be people with way more and people who wish they had more. And that's, that is our human nature. But until everyone has what they need, we are suffering, right? Our unity, that us all being one, when other people are suffering, when groups of people are suffering, we're all suffering. We're all becoming um, less, right? So live. Here's a better one. Better than he who dies with all the toys, that junk. How about live simply so that others can simply live? I think these sayings and this belief is extremely important as we are moving into um, a state of living where things are a little up in the air, right? The pandemic showed us how we can have trouble with the supply chain. There can be less food sometimes, less things that we need to buy. Um, Climate change is changing how people live and what people can do in their own homes anymore. Um, there are things changing, and it's important to think about this. How are we all going to live in a world where there may be some scarcity, there may be some difficulties? How will we get through this? And the yamas are a great way. Um, I like to think of them as something that, I mean, they came from the yogic tradition, which came from the East, which in the East there is much more of a sense of community, a sense of uh, one being less than the whole, which is kind of great in some ways. I mean, there's some cultural traditions that are not so great about that, but that belief is important. It's a different way of looking at things than we sometimes see. Um, and I think it's important, right? This is something that grew out of their society, right? Um, if you go to places like India and Nepal, people live very close together. It's very densely populated. If you don't get along with your neighbors, you're going to have a problem, right? Here, we tend to, we'll build a wall between ourselves and our neighbors. We'll go move out west where we don't have any neighbors. I mean, um, we have structured our society a little differently, um, and to our detriment, I think. We find that there is a lack of concern for others, that there is a selfishness, that this is all bred, um, that we need to overcome. It's a false idea of division. Um, we we're lost because we feel alone when we are not alone. We never were. Um, we try so hard to be on our own, but really we're all connected. So um, I think this is something that the yamas can help us with. Right? It can help us navigate a healthy way to deal with others and really understanding that as we deal with others and our relationships, we ultimately help ourselves, right? So it helps everyone. Okay, asana. Let's do it. That wasn't actually very brief. I should have. The yamas are never, it's never just a brief thing though, because they're so big. Um, it's hard to touch on it briefly. They are something that I will, everyone will, you'll come back to again and again and again. And every time you think about them, every time you touch on them, you will see another way that they impact your life. You'll see another part of them unfold. Um, they are so large but simple. Um, they are multi-purpose and multifaceted, and um, really just remarkable, I think, in their ability to guide us. Okay, So let's extend the legs, point and flex the feet. Rotate through the ankles, one way and the other. Soles of the feet together. Sit tall, and then lean forward. Remember, initiating this at the hip, pulling the shoulders back. If you're not sure, if you feel like you might be rounding the shoulders, bring your arms back as you lean. Come on back up. Let's bring the knees together and walk the heels in as close as you can here. We're going to just sit up tall, shoulders back. And then bring the soles of the feet together. We're going to bring the hands behind you, fingertips pointing away. And you want your hands a little behind you, but not so far. You want to be able to squeeze the shoulders, gaze up, feel a nice stretch through the back. And coming back up. Tabletop. And let's sit back on the heels. Coming back up, we're going to swing the right leg around. So we're up on that left knee. Arms overhead. Maybe lean back a little. And then hands to center. Take a breath in and a twist. So you could hook the elbow here. Or if you want to stay more upright, just bring that left arm down, press against the knee, pull the right shoulder back. Back to center. And then right hand down by the foot, lifting up the left. Both hands down. And we're going to kind of lean into. Breathe. And then we're going to walk the foot across for pigeon. If you don't want to do this, you can just stay in your lizard, or you could come back to child's pose. It's up to you. You could also just stay here instead of going all the way down. If you're having some trouble with this, bring the foot back closer to the body. Lots of options here. Make your way up. We're going to plant the hands, flip that back foot, and lift up. It's okay if you touch down. Three-legged dog. And then set the foot back down. Back to tabletop. Swing that left leg around. Arms overhead, maybe lean back. And hands to center. Breath in and a twist. And back. Left hand down by the foot. Lift the right arm. And then both hands down to the mat. Stepping in here, you might be sliding that right knee back. However much you want to put into this, right? Just see. And then walk that foot across, setting up for your pigeon. It could be easier or harder on this side. We're trying to do about the same on each side. Moving back up. Plant your hands, and we're lifting up. Set your foot down. And then step the feet up, and we're back down to a seat. Extend the legs. Let's point and flex again. Rotate through the ankles. One way and the other. Bend the right knee and then lower. So we've got that foot close to the thigh. Take a deep breath. Arms overhead, reaching down towards that left foot. Back up, switch it around. Take a deep breath. Reaching forward. And moving back up. Both legs out in front. Deep breath. Fold forward. Back up. Let's bend the knees. Lowering down. Hug that right knee in. Left leg long. Switch it around. And then let's rest the feet on the mat. We're going to do supported bridge. So heels back, close to the body. Got a block or something? Now is the time. We're going to lift up. Find a place for the block that feels secure and good. If you don't feel good with the block, try shifting it. A lot of times we have it up a little too high, so maybe bring it a little lower on the body. We don't want it up around the lower back. A lot of times people sort of visualize having the block under the lower back, but you actually want your pelvic area, your sort of hips and pelvis to be, well, not really your hips, but that general area is what we are supporting. So as with everything in our asana practice, we're looking for that place that feels right for you. And there definitely are structural differences with people and their bodies. So the place that's perfect for you might be different than your friend or your neighbor or anybody else. So again, be your own teacher here. Find what works. And then lifting up, we're removing the block, lower back down, soles of the feet together, maybe bring the arms up overhead one way or another. That feels relaxing. Bring these together. We're going to rock back and forth a little. Arms to a T, lowering the knees, gaze left. Back to center, and then gazing right, knees go left. And back. Extend the legs, hands by your side. Then lowering, we could go one at a time or both together. Take your pick. Relax and breathe. Steady and calm. So much about yoga is, it all comes back to yourself, your big self, big S self, and little s self. Um, you are your best teacher. You have the knowledge within you. You can access it. You may not have it yet, right? But you can access it. That internal intelligence, that connection to the universal. Um, it will guide you. It will awaken in you that which needs to be awakened. Um, so much of the yamas and yoga in general it's blueprints, right? It doesn't build you a house, but it shows you how. You still have to put in a lot of hard work. You got to buy the tools. you gotta you gotta get out there and work on it. Um, but you've got the blueprint. Um, you can see, hopefully, in your eye, right? So some people are better at this than others, right? Some people can imagine what the finished product will look like, and other people struggle with this. So either you have this picture of what the result is, your finished house, or you can have the faith that um, others have done this path, and that in truth that this will lead to your finished product. um, both are courageous, right? Both are tough ways to go. um, there is an element of faith in all of this, but it's not blind faith, right? We may step out in faith, but we start to reap results almost immediately. You will see things in your life change. You will see you yourself, your attitudes, your behaviors change. Um, it isn't, uh, you can see things begin to take shape, and you'll see the improvements very soon in kind of everything about your life. So keep at it. If you get discouraged, be discouraged. Understand that it's a long term process. there are going to be rainouts, and there are going to be days when you just can't bear to do anything. But we're making progress as we go. And taking time off, taking some breaks, um, that might be what you need. And if you're giving your body what it needs, then you're already practicing yoga. So even when you, and that's kind of talk about this sort of snowball effect with yoga. It starts out like just a tiny seed, right? And a seed is a very important term in yoga. The Sanskrit word for seed is bija, and it's a very important idea because we think of so many things about yoga as seeds. We are a seed. We contain, just as a seed, it's so tiny, contains everything it needs to grow and thrive. So do we. Um, but this seed begins, and it starts to gather steam, to gather size. We learn, we grow, and it starts to form and take shape, and it has a momentum kind of its own. So even if you aren't actively practicing, there is movement, there is growth. You have already this framework of things that are helping you, guide you. Even when you think you aren't doing anything particularly yogic, you are. You're making choices in alignment with the yamas because it's become a habit. It's become part of your daily life. Um, this is the goal, right? This is what we are working towards, this ability to integrate yoga into our daily activities, right? So that even if we aren't practicing, we are practicing. Okay, come on back to movement in the body. Um, Maybe making your way up to a seat. We're going to do a little meditation. So if you want to just stay lying down, you can do that. But we're going to be comfortable. So laying down or sitting in a chair or sitting on a cushion, whatever you want to do. Um, it'll help you stay solid in here for 5 minutes. Let's do it. So keeping that peaceful state of mind, breathing, relaxing. Keep that gentle focus. Okay, we're back. Breath in, breath out. Hopefully that feels pretty good. Um, if you fell asleep, that's okay. I keep wondering if someday I'm going to fall asleep sitting up here. I don't think so. That would be something if I did, though. Um, I'm sure I've told you about the yoga class that I took where at the end of Shavasana, the yoga teacher just left and didn't end Shavasana, just let everyone stay. Not, I wouldn't recommend that as a teaching technique, but yeah, there were a handful of us that slept for 15, 20 minutes and then woke up and were wondering what was going on. So it happens, and it's okay if it does. Probably just means you need to get a little more sleep, because ideally, we should be able to sit for 5 minutes without crashing, right? If you are, then that tells me you need more sleep. So try to get some more sleep. Okay. Enjoy your weekend. The nice weather. I think it's not too bad out there. And I'll be back Monday.